So I'm Kelly Bly. I'm Culikid's executive director. And Culikid is a nonprofit that provides healthy culinary programs for individuals of all abilities, including those with special needs. And our programs aim to teach healthy habits as well as social and independent skills. I also want to point out that we'll be having another live class coming up, which will be on May 17th at 11 a.m. That's a Sunday. And that one's going to be completely free, actually. It's going to be a quick 20-minute class, most likely. We're going to make some peanut butter oat bites. Completely no heat, no knives. So it'll be a really fun way to get anybody who wants to involved in the kitchen. And I'll drop that registration link in the chat once we get started. I also want to mention that after this ends, I'll share a survey link with you all via email. And I really encourage you all to take a few minutes to take it. This is our very first live virtual cooking class. We're so glad to have you all here, and we'd love to hear what you thought about today, as well as what you'd like to see from us in the future. So please look out for that. I already did mention that everybody is muted, and you can use the chat feature to communicate. If you were coming in a little bit late, just use that chat to send us your name and your birthday month, so we can practice using that. And I also want to point out that we are recording this webinar. So if you do not want to be recorded, you can turn your camera off. I'll also be taking some screenshots that we'd love to share on social media. So if you don't want to be featured in that, just please let us know, and I will make sure to cover you up on social media, or you can also turn off your camera. And if you're cooking with anybody at home, please ask them to take pictures. We'd love to see what the other side of this looks like and see your creations at the end. Please share them with us via email, which I'll also put into the chat, or you can tag us on social media on Instagram or Facebook. Okay, so I think we're about ready to get started. I just want to point out that we have a pretty flexible recipe today. So if you haven't thought about your ingredients yet, I just want to point out that you can substitute and omit whatever you want based on your allergies and preferences, or maybe based on what groceries you have on hand. So if you do have specific questions about what you can substitute or how your recipe is coming along as we're cooking, just throw them into the chat, and I'll be happy to monitor those and shout them out loud for Chef Jazz to respond to. So now I will turn it over to Chef Jazz, and I'll allow her to introduce herself and the recipe and get us cooking. And I have to find her. Sorry, there you go.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chef Jazz. I'm so excited to be cooking with you guys today. We're going to have a taco party on Cinco de Mayo, so this is going to be great. A little bit about me. I am a chef based in New York. I've worked at Poulet at Home. I've worked with Melba's, which is like Southern food. And I've been with Culikid since the beginning of January. So I'm really excited to cook with you guys. And I know that we have some birthdays that just passed. So maybe Kelly, let's unmute everybody for this so that we don't all hear me singing happy birthday to everyone.
Okay.
But we're gonna
I am
wash
gonna
hands.
unmute you all, as Chef Jazz was saying. So I think that everybody might have heard that the trick to washing your hands for the right amount of time is to sing happy birthday twice. So we will sing happy birthday to one of our participants whose birthday was most recent, Ayumi. I didn't see anybody with one closer than that. So I'm unmuting everybody.
Okay. Water on. Let's wash hands. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Amy. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Amy.
Happy birthday to you. All right, that was so good.
That was great harmonizing, guys.
All right, so sorry. Sorry.
Okay,
Okay, so you're back, Jazz.
awesome. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show you guys is I have my cutting board set up. This little red guy is my cutting board. I put a paper towel underneath so that it could be my anchor so my board won't move for when I'm cutting or whatever I'm doing. And well, you won't be seeing much of my face now because we're gonna get into it, right? So the first thing we're gonna do is we should have all gathered our ingredients. And the first thing is we're gonna open our canned products, okay? So we're gonna take our can opener. And for the beans, I like to give them a shake and maybe even a bang so that the beans aren't all stuck to one side. And this side is dented, so I'm gonna open this side because I feel more confident about that one. So here we go. Oops. And we're gonna carefully open our cans. And this is a great part for our adults to step in and help because it could be a little bit tricky because I'm having trouble with my can opener right now.
Yeah, so like Chef Jazz said, yeah, exactly. The top does tend to be a little bit easier to open. You're leaking a little bit there, Jazz, though.
Oop, there we go. Okay.
And anybody who hasn't used the can opener before, you want to use this blade piece to stick into the can. And then once you get that click, and then you can start turning. How's our beans coming?
Is anyone else using like I am? Ooh, I think my can opener might not want to be opened.
Oh no.
Ooh, no.
Oh
my can
no.
opener just broke.
Well, that's what happens
Okay.
during live cooking classes, you guys. And now here's a perfect example of how we're going to roll with the punches of what we have. And
exactly.
maybe Chef Jazz will omit her beans.
Yeah, so I won't be using beans, unfortunately. I'm going to clean this up really quickly, and we're going to keep on going, okay? So I had canned beans, and my corn was actually in my beans because that's all they had in the supermarket.
So I see Sheridan showing us her corn. Great.
Awesome.
And I just want to show you guys, since we did miss out on Jazz's beans, we have our beans here, and that you want to drain them and rinse them because they get a little goopy at the bottom of that can.
Exactly. So canned beans, if you have your canned corn or if you have canned tomatoes, now is the time to open all of your canned products.
And then for people using frozen corn, how much should we say? 1 cup?
1 cup is good if you're using frozen, and you can just reserve that on the side. I have these little containers that I like to hold everything in.
All right.
And
so
are we just about ready for the next? Okay, I see beans, beautiful. Those look good.
Yeah, it looks like Max is rinsing his beans.
Rinsing.
Oh, great.
Awesome.
Awesome, we've got beans and corn.
Oh,
I've also pre-done my ingredients. I have my corn here. Make sure you measure that or open up that can. And tomatoes. Does that mean you're going to be lacking tomatoes too, Chef Jazz?
I don't have tomatoes either.
Uh-oh, we lost her. Okay, well, while she is coming back, we can move on to another step. So I think we're going to measure our spices next. So if everybody has all of their spices ready, and you want to get a little ramekin like this, so we can put them all in here together. So I don't have mine in front of me because I pre-measured mine, but I'll show you. So the first thing we'll do is we'll put 1 teaspoon of ground cumin. So find your cumin and your teaspoon measuring spoon. Oh, hi.
Thank you. Thank you. I was
Sorry.
muted. Okay, so you were measuring things, correct?
Yeah. So I just started by telling everybody to grab their ground cumin and a 1 teaspoon. And I was going to demonstrate, but if you have that ready and you want to show us how we should measure our spices.
Yeah, sure. So I have my measuring tools right here. So we're going to use half a teaspoon of our garlic powder, our chipotle chili, our pepper, and our salt. So I'm just going to gather all of those right in front of me so that I can easily reach in, measure. You can see I'm shaking off any excess so that it's actually 1/2 teaspoon, and I'm going to put it into my container. Okay, so let's repeat. Same with the pepper. My chili powder.
Okay, so I just also typed that into the chat in case that went too quick for anybody. So it's half a teaspoon each of the salt, ground black pepper, garlic powder, and chili powder.
Yes.
Okay, I see
and
everybody.
Again, you want to just either reach in or use the little setting so that it scoops and you have the right amount you need. And you can put it right in.
Nice and level.
And we're done with a lot of these, guys. So I like to put things away as I go when I know I'm not going to use them anymore, because I have a tiny New York City kitchen. So those are going away. I need 1 teaspoon of my cumin and my paprika. So I have my measuring spoon, cumin. I'm measuring into here. That goes in. This goes away.
Okay, as everybody's cooking, don't forget, if you have questions for us, just throw them into the chat, or if you need us to repeat anything.
It's a little bit extra, but I like paprika. So now we should have our taco seasoning ready to go, okay? So let's see where you guys are at. Ready to continue? More or less? Feels like
we still
yeah.
Some spices going.
We're still going? Okay.
What will our next step be? For
the
those
next
who
thing
are
we're
ready?
going to do is chop, right?
Okay.
So we have our onions that need to be diced, our jalapenos, and our garlic need to be minced. So I want to make sure you guys are all paying attention, because this part is really important. It's our knife skills part, because if we're going to be in the kitchen, we want to be careful. I know you guys, a lot of you are using Culikid knives, but they're still sharp and they're still knives, and we still want to practice proper knife skills with them, okay? So
I have my Culikid knife here. And
awesome.
Olivia, that's half a teaspoon of pepper. Who just asked that in the chat. Anybody have any questions, just let me know. And a few people are still finishing up spices. Anybody who's ready to move on, get your cutting board and knife ready like Chef Jazz has. And it looks like we'll be doing the onion first. Is that right?
Yes.
And speaking of substitutions, my onion just went bad. So I'm going to be using onion powder. So that is a possibility for you guys if you don't happen to have an onion.
Absolutely. If you're not a jalapeno fan, if you don't like the spice or the heat, You don't need to use the jalapeno. If you can do a garlic powder as well if you ran out of garlic.
Yep. Yep, we still look like we're working just a little bit.
Yeah. What's good about this recipe is that once we get a lot of this prep out of the way, the actual cook time is quick, which means we get to eat pretty quickly. So
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, prepping is always the longest, and then we'll just cook everything really quick and it will be time for dinner.
I see Max is still measuring, Sheridan is measuring. Ariel.
Looks like Sheridan's ready to cook. Do you have your knife ready? Are you ready to cut? Sorry. Okay. Looks like we're ready to get started, I think. And then I can also re-demonstrate how to hold our knife and all that if anybody needs to get caught up. So,
Gotcha. So what we do when we are holding knives, we always hold our produce with a claw to hold it in place, and we saw with our knives. So the best way to hold your knife is this is the blade, this is the handle. You hold the handle like a handshake, and then you see my pointer and my thumb are on both sides of the blade, okay? So the reason why you do this is because you want to have really good knife control. So in control of what you're doing, a lot of people cut like this and your knife could kind of slip away from you. Even though a lot of us are using the plastic Culikid spoons, again, you still want to be careful and safe when you're cutting. So I have my onion, I'm holding onto it really tight. Adults, this might be a good place for you guys to step in and help with this initial cut in half because it is a large, our onions are pretty big, but I'm clawing, holding this with a bear claw, and I'm sawing down, okay? So now I have half of my onion, and I'm gonna remove all of this top layer and this skin. Now, a lot of us throw this top layer away. What I like to do is put it in a Ziploc bag in the freezer. And when my Ziploc bag gets full of onion scraps and of garlic scraps and, you know, celery scraps, carrot scraps, I turn it into a stock at the end of the month. So I'm just talking to you. That's what my instructor in culinary school used to say. I'm just talking to you, okay? So now we have our onion peeled, and I'm going to saw it. I'm going to lay it flat, and I'm going to cut across. So I'm cutting all the way across. And then now I just have this flat piece. So now you can just cut. And this is how we get our dice, okay? And I think it's going to be a lot easier to cut this onion with our plastic knives like this than we normally would with, for the adults in this class who know how to fancy cut onions in a normal dice. This is definitely the easiest way to go about this. So I have a lot more to go, and so do you guys. So I'm going to keep on cutting. So again, I'm cutting it all the way across. It might be easier if you stand it up like this and you cut it down like this. And then now I'm just going to slice it, dice it, claw, and saw. Can you see that?
Yeah, that looks great.
Okay.
Nice and easy way. Just want to point out a few things about safety with cutting that we might not think about all the time is that if you're feeling like it's difficult, that you want to make sure that your cutting board is right in front of you. You shouldn't be struggling or reaching, and
Yeah, you
that's how
shouldn't
you're
be
going to
cutting
get
over things.
right.
Sure.
And so if you also have your cut onions, see how Chef Jazz has moved her onions to the side so they're not in her workspace. So make sure that you're not, like she said, reaching over something. You want to have full control over your knife, and that's also going to give you the most strength in your cuts as well. Teresa said, do we need to cut the cherry tomatoes? And so, yes, I would say you have to cut the cherry tomatoes either in half or in quarters.
Yeah.
Unless, so we skip that for, because you have the canned tomatoes, right? So anybody with canned diced tomatoes do not need to cut. For anybody with cherry tomatoes, I actually have some, so I can show you.
Yeah, I would say when you're cutting things, especially for like a taco, the idea is what size would you want to eat? So in your bite. So would you rather have it be a half or would you rather it be a quarter? I think they look cute when they're sliced in half personally. So.
And our Culikid knives are actually really perfect to slice tomatoes with because they're easier to do with a bit of a serrated knife. So if you don't have a Culikid knife and you're using a chef's knife, I find it easier to switch to like a steak knife or something like that that has a little bit of the serration. So this is how I cut my cherry tomatoes. I cut them in quarters, so like them smaller. And I actually only did about half of my carton of cherry tomatoes. But again, it's up to preferences and what we want to add.
Yeah. So we're keeping in mind as we're cooking, what of this do we want to garnish with, meaning like decorate our tacos with at the end? If you know that you like raw onions on your tacos, then maybe save a little bit of what you're cutting right now for that. If you know you like a lot of tomatoes at the end as well, same thing. You'll want to cut more than half of the container. Same with your beans and your corn. This is a very large onion, so I think I just need to do one more rough chop. And then I'm ready to move on to our garlic and jalapenos. What about you guys?
Let's see, it looks like Tori's ready to move on and getting a thumbs up.
Awesome.
Some people look like they're still cooking. So how about this? If you're ready to cut the next thing, type ready into the chat. And maybe if you're ready and we're not moving on yet and you have tomatoes to cut, you can start doing those. And so let me see if you can see my board if I tilt this down. So these are going to roll around on your board, so you just want to hold them on the side, cut in half, and then like I said, I cut mine into quarters. You take each half and put it flat and then cut it into quarters. But you can also just leave it there if you like that. And when we put them in the pan, they're also cooked down a little bit too. Okay, we have a bunch of readies and also a bunch of not yet readies.
Okay, we'll wait for you readies. You can start peeling your garlic because that takes a second. And this is another thing that I actually, these peelings right here, I also put in my little Ziploc stock bag because they have flavor too, even though they're just like garlic skin with peels.
Yeah. I actually do that too, and I just actually put some parsley stems in there from my cooking the other night. And I
That's
also
a
have
good
some
one.
carrot peelings.
I do the carrot peelings and I use the carrot stems because I usually use the top for like a pesto, but like that little, the stem part in between the like, yeah, those have flavor. They all have flavor.
Yeah,
So
I love that.
over here. I have this ready, and I have this ready.
I'm also curious, you know, we didn't talk about the fact that we are having our class on Cinco de Mayo and on Taco Tuesday, so it's very timely. I wonder if anybody on this class knows, without looking it up, what Cinco de Mayo celebrates. If you know, type that into the chat. Okay, Olivia, if you know it, type it into the chat to everybody. And I see Yumi is ready for our next step. Olivia, still waiting to hear what your answer is. The celebration of the Battle of Pueblo against the French. So right you are, Olivia. Great job.
Thank you for sharing that tidbit.
Olivia, did you learn that in school, or did you just happen to just know that because you're brilliant? We'll wait to find out if Olivia learned that in school or if she's just full of brilliance. But I think that we have enough people who might be ready to move on, especially if some of our ingredients that we're doing next are a little bit optional, like our jalapeno. So why don't we start with our garlic, and then everybody can catch up.
So garlic. I have taken the peels off, and I'm going to show you this first one first. It might be easier for us if you put it down, you put the garlic down flat. You take your knife and you just put down, you press down, and it releases a lot of the garlic flavors. And it usually, if you hit it flat enough, it also makes it easier to hold together while you're cutting. So I'm going to slice it, slice it, slice it, slice it. So if you're using the serrated knife, you're clawing. You see my claw, and you're sawing, right? So we should be clawing and sawing.
Yes, I see. Dariel is so ready with his knife. Great.
We are clawing and sawing.
And I just want to show again for anybody who is ready to get started with cooking how we should be holding our knives. Okay, this is like, I think this is the default for everybody. We want to hold it like this to get the most control out of it. You can keep going, Chef Jazz.
We are clawing and sawing. So you see my claw and you see my saw. So once we have a lot of these slices, we can start the mincing part. And mincing really means just cutting into really small pieces. So I'm going to line them up, and I'm going to just continue to cut. So I'm putting my, can you see this?
Yep.
I have my hands on the front of the knife, and then with the back of the knife, I'm just continuing to saw back and forth and cut all of the pieces. So we're trying to get them really small. And the reason why we like to cut garlic so small is because it has so much flavor, and the more surface area, the more little tiny bits we have, the more flavor we're gonna get out of it. So we're gonna keep sawing this, clawing and sawing and clawing and sawing.
I want to share that Olivia also told us that she learned that tidbit from her dad a few days ago. So go dad for the fun facts of the day.
Yeah, I love
And
historical day information.
Oh, where should we be putting all these ingredients? Such a great question. That
So
was from Max.
Good question. So I have bowls put aside. I'm putting my garlic right back into this little container that I had for it. And for the tomatoes and your beans and corn, when we're cooking our beans and our corn, we're going to be cooking them together. So unless you don't like for your toppings to touch, you can put those in a container together. You can give the tomatoes a container for themselves. The onions have a container, and then I have my garlic and my jalapenos going together in a container. So here's my onions. Here are my spices. Here are my garlic. And when I'm trying to put my garlic in its container, I'm picking up my board and I'm just scooping it in.
Awesome.
The next thing we're going to be cutting. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just making sure that we answered Max's question and that he's all set. So just like little bowls, Tupperwares, anything you have on hand. And like Chef Jazz said, you can put certain things together or you can just keep them all separate. So go ahead. What are we up to next?
Now we're up to our jalapeno. So jalapeno has some heat to it. So it's kind of like when you cut into a lemon and you have a cut in your hand and it might sting a little bit. The jalapenos, if your hands are a little bit sensitive, or if you have an open cut, this could be a little bit, it could burn. So an adult might want to step in for this part if we're cutting jalapenos. I think it's a nice addition to the taco, the nice little bit of heat, but not everyone likes heat. So I cut off that top part, and now I am going to cut it in half and slice it down the middle. And you see all of these seeds? You can take a spoon actually and scoop it out so that you're not touching it too much, okay?
Yeah, and I don't know if you said this part explicitly, but that's where all that heat is in the seeds and that inside lighter green part. So that's where it's going to burn the most if you touch it or have a cut like we were saying. So that's why the spoon is the best way instead of just using your fingers. I've actually gotten that jalapeno oil on my fingers from doing a bunch of jalapenos and it burnt for a really long time. So don't do what I did.
Yeah, so if you have gloves, or if you want to have an adult help you with this part, I think that'll do the trick.
Oh, good question. Priscilla and Troy, I want to know, why do onions make you cry? Do you know the answer to this, Chef Jazz?
Off the top of my head, I do not. But we can Google.
Hold that thought.
I know it's something I don't know what the name of what it is in the onions that make you cry. I know I've looked this up before.
Okay, it is synpropanethyl S oxide. Yeah, that's a tongue twister a little bit. So that's the irritant that it emits, and that's what is making you cry. Which I
don't remember the name.
Biggest crier when I cut onions.
Really?
Oh my gosh. I have to leave the kitchen sometimes for extended periods of times and wipe my tears. I just typed our onion irritant into the chat for anybody who's curious to learn another fun fact of the day. And a few things that can help with that. Well, let me have you demo the rest of our jalapeno, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about some onion tricks.
So I line these up over here because I'm not ready for them yet. I usually like to cut with the smooth side down. So I'm gonna get all of my seeds off because I don't want it to be too hot. And we're gonna cut little strips. So think like a French fry, but we want it to be small, right? Like the garlic. So now we have all of these little strips, little rods, and we're gonna continue to cut
Is that
them.
your chopped up jalapeno? I think Sheridan, yeah, Sheridan looks like she's showing us her knife skills already. Nice. And then, yeah, turn them all. And the other thing I want to point out about cutting too is notice that Chef Jazz is turning the ingredients and not herself or her knife. So you almost always want to have your knife right in front of you and upright, unless we were doing that horizontal cut on that onion. But so if you need to change the direction of your cut, change the way your ingredients are facing and not necessarily how your knife is.
Absolutely. I want to keep cutting strips. So for some of us, it's easier if we do all of the strips at once. That also makes it a little bit faster. So I'm going to cut all my strips at once. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to chop them all into little pieces at once.
Okay, and remember that you're making this to your preferences. So if you don't want to use a whole jalapeno, you can just use half or however much you want. So I cut this whole amount. That's my whole jalapeno that I did before. But I'm probably only going to put in half of that because I'm not big on spice. And then I'm going to leave that other half for my husband's topping of his taco because he is big on spice. So that's how we're going to manage that one.
And then remember, we're still clawing and sawing. My fingers are on both sides of the blade still. And this is something that you have to keep reminding yourself until this becomes the way that you automatically hold your knife. So this isn't how I always held my knife. I didn't know how to hold it right before I went to culinary school. And it was like very strange in the beginning. And then it became normal to me. And now I understand why everyone kept saying to do it this way.
And while we're doing that, I just wanted to give a tip about the onions that I found most useful in preventing tears. One is to do the dice similar to what we did, except with, multiple horizontal lines. The less cuts you do all at once and expose it, the less likely you are to cry, in my experience. But the thing that actually works the most for me is actually putting an onion into the fridge or freezer for a little while before you cut it. And I don't know why, but it's something about it getting cold that I think minimizes that synpropanthenyl oxide, whatever that word is. So if you're a big onion crier like I am, then try the fridge before you cut your next one. And
so now, wherever you are, you should be able to start this next recipe because we're going to allow you the opportunity to come back to cutting, okay? So if you're still cutting your jalapenos or your garlic right now, you're going to just put your knife down and grab your onions and make your way over to your stove. And our onions are going to cook down for a little while. So we can go back to anything if we need to, but we want to just give that some time on the stove while we continue to do the things we need to do, okay? So I'm at my stove and I'm turning on my heat. And I have my heat, it's medium heat, it's just straight across. I'm gonna let my pan get hot.
Yeah, and
give that a minute.
Medium heat on everybody's stove probably is a different number or a different setting. You might say medium heat, it might be the number that's in the middle, but like Chef Jazz said, if you just turn it directly opposite of off, that is exactly medium heat. So that's what you want it to look like.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And if anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about, please send your questions in the chat.
So I have my heat going. It's starting to feel nice and warm. And I'm going to just eyeball a little bit of oil. And I want enough oil that you have to keep in mind we're going to cook everything in this pot, in this pan. So I want enough oil that the whole bottom of the pan is covered. I'm going to let that get hot. And add my onions. So what we want with our onions is we want them to go from, right now they're really white. I want them to go translucent and maybe even a little bit caramelized. Caramelized meaning when it gets those little brown bits and they have like some really nice flavor to them. So we're letting that go while we continue to cut our onion, our jalapeno, our garlic. We could also start prepping whatever toppings we're going to use. So don't have to worry about your onions. They're going to be fine. I'll tell you when to give them a mix. It's going to be great.
And you mentioned that you want them to be translucent. Can you explain what that means if anybody doesn't know?
So translucent means see-through. So we want it to be clear. And I'll show you when my onions start to become a little bit translucent. But we can hear, can you hear my onions cooking? I can hear them cooking.
A little bit.
So we're gonna give that another little mix. We're working on our jalapenos, our onions. We have our seasoning ready. And we could also start on our cilantro right now. So this is how I keep my cilantro. I keep it in a mason jar in the refrigerator with the bag that I get it from the supermarket in right over it. And that keeps it fresh for a really long time. This is a whole bunch. I don't need a whole bunch for my toppings. I would say I need about this much. So I'm going to take this much out, nice handful. I'm going to put the bag right back over this guy, and I'm going to put him back in my fridge because I know he doesn't want to be out in my warm kitchen.
How long would you say that that would last in your fridge if you store it like that?
Over a week, easily.
Awesome.
You want to change the water I never actually remember to change it every day, but I change it every few days. And that's how I always keep my cilantro, and it lasts until I finish it, and that I usually finish it in like a week or so. So I have my cilantro. I'm gonna just rinse it. Quickly dry it. And this is gonna be chopped next. So you can use your whole cilantro as for your garnish. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut it in half and then make one big bunch and cut all of my cilantro together in one big bunch. And we're doing this while our onions are caramelizing. They're on the stove, they're medium heat, they're starting to smell good. The cilantro smells good. I'm getting hungry. And we're clawing and sawing.
Awesome. And remember, this is for your garnish. This is optional. So if this is one of those things that you don't have, don't worry about it. If you decided to get other garnishes and toppings that we didn't say, like I am a sour cream fanatic, so I have some sour cream that's going to go on top as well. You can get those ready too. If there's anything we haven't talked about that you need to chop or anything. And we'll do cheese together, right? We're going to be grating some cheese together.
That's next, yeah.
Awesome. So we'll do that part together.
If you just remember that you have some radishes in the fridge, take out your radishes. This is going in a container for my garnish.
And all your garnishes you want to put into containers like this, just like our other ingredients, and probably keep separate. This is what makes the taco party so much fun if you're sharing this with your family after, that you can all take your own toppings as much as you want and make your own tacos.
So now I am going to take a peek over at my onions. Give them a stir. My onions, as you can see, they're clear now, so they're translucent. They have that see-through quality of them. Some of them are getting a little bit brown, but we're not cooking it so fast that it's like burning. So right now what's happening is we're just developing flavor. So the onions are going still. We'll give that another minute. Where is everyone? So we're up to our garnishes more or less. Looks like it. Okay.
Yep.
So I'm going to actually go ahead and add my garlic and my jalapeno. And we're going to cook this until the garlic and the jalapenos become fragrant. So fragrant means start to smell good, start to smell yummy. So that's already happening with the onions, but we're going to start smelling our garlic. And cooking is really a multi-sensory process. So what I mean when I say multi-sensory is we're using all of our senses. We're using our hands to cut, we're touching everything. We are using our eyes to see what we're doing. We're gonna smell when the garlic is ready. We're gonna taste this at the end. So I'm starting to smell all of this deliciousness. And I'm ready to add my taco seasoning. So I'm just giving it a nice little mix in my container. If you have a spoon and you want to mix it around, you can. But I'm just going to put it right on over my onions and my garlic and my jalapenos. And I'm going to mix it because what I want is for the spices and the oil and the onions, all of these flavors and smells to come together and mingle and start this party before I add my beef. So the next thing is my ground beef, okay? So here is my beef. Here's my beef. I'm opening it. I just took it, I got it from the butcher. It looks good. There's a little bit of brown spots in it. That's okay. That just means that that's the air hitting the beef. The red is fine, great, smells good. This is going in the pot. I'm gonna rinse my hands because I just touched that. But now that it's in the pan, I'm going to break it up so that it's like taco size, looking neat. I'm using my spoon or my spatula. As long as it's heat resistant, you can use whatever you have on hand. And we're gonna keep breaking this up as quickly as possible.
How's everybody doing?
Salt.
Anybody have
Yeah,
any questions or need us to repeat, just ask. I actually don't see everybody, so I think that means they're over at their stove doing what we are talking about over here.
okay. So I'm going to keep breaking up this ground beef. And we're going to keep cooking it until it's no longer pink.
Can you use this seasoning with any meat or fish? Priscilla would like to know.
Yeah, I would definitely use this on anything. Yeah, totally. And I personally have my seasonings that I go to, which is pretty much these guys. And I use them on everything. I use them on carrots too sometimes, or cauliflower. So don't be afraid to use these same blend on veggies. So I'm going to bring this over to you.
Looking good.
I'm still seeing a little bit of pink, but I have my tacos nice and the meat's becoming nice and bite-sized.
Mm. So while we're here and mixing, because it's like, this is a lot of work at the stove, let's just talk about a little bit of stove safety, which is that while the burner is hot and the pan is hot, usually the handle won't be. But if you needed to, or you felt more comfortable, you could always use an oven mitt. I've got this handy dandy oven mitt that you could use to hold your pan if you're feeling like the handle is getting hot. And the other thing that you want to make sure is that your handle, especially when you step away from the stove, is not sticking over the edge. I don't think you can see mine very well, but that's because you might walk by and hit it, and then you'd have a whole lot of hot food splattered all over and probably on you, and that wouldn't be good or safe.
Yeah, and if you're saying, Kelly, I wouldn't walk by and spill it, well, somebody else who lives with you might.
Right, exactly.
So you have to be cautious of that. I'm adding a little bit of pepper because we always try to season as we go. A little bit more salt. And my ground beef is just about ready, but I'm going to give it another minute. And while that's happening, I want to talk to you guys because this is where our taco party becomes kind of choose your own adventure. So some of us like a saucy taco. So our next step would be to add our beans, our corn, our tomatoes, and our stock to this pot, which Kelly will demonstrate since you have those things.
Yeah, I just want to stop you for just 1 minute. I think you probably just heard Jazz say the answer, but Abby, we were not supposed to do anything with beans or corn yet. So don't worry, miss anything. The only thing in the pot, in the pan so far are the onions, jalapeno, garlic, our spices, and our beef.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Jess.
So this is where it becomes choose your own adventure. You can either take your corn and your beans and your tomatoes and add it to your ground beef once you don't see any more pink, or you can warm them up on the side and you can use them as toppings if you don't like a saucy taco, okay? So since I couldn't open my canned corn or beans or tomatoes, I'm not gonna have a super saucy taco, but I am still gonna use a little bit of water to cook this down. Or Kelly, do you have all of the ingredients?
I have like kind of a combo. So I have the beans and corn, and then I actually have cherry tomatoes instead of the can. But I actually do have some leftover tomato sauce, so I can do a little bit of both. If you have just plain tomatoes, you can just do those. If you have the can with the sauce with it, then you can put that in, and that is what's going to make it a little bit saucier. And
so I propose this. How about Kelly, you do our saucy and I'll do our non-saucy tacos.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, my beef is looking just about ready. How's everybody else doing? Any questions? Any concerns? Looking good, whoever I can see. Sheridan looks a little bit like a professional chef in her kitchen.
Nice. And if your beef is no longer pink, we can do like mine. What I'm gonna do is take a little scoop. I'm gonna let it cool off so I don't burn my mouth in front of you guys. And I'm gonna taste it because we always want to taste as we go. You can still see all of this smoke coming off. Well, not really, I can see it. So we're gonna let this go, let this go, let this go. Looking good, Priscilla. You guys are cooking, everybody's cooking. This is so much fun.
I see that Jeriel has a handy dandy taco holder, which is incredible. I love that.
Very professional.
Yeah, that is gonna look gorgeous. Please take a picture of those when they're done and send it to us. And Priscilla, we decided not to cook the meat with the corn and beans, but we'll make a salsa with it on the side. Perfect. That's exactly what you should be doing. Whatever you feel like, however you feel like you want to make your tacos, go ahead and do it.
It's your world, yeah. So, Kelly, can you demonstrate the next step?
Sure. I'm adding everything all at once. The beans, corn, tomatoes.
Beans, corn, tomatoes, and then half a cup of water. If you just remembered that you have a beef stock or chicken stock or vegetable stock in your refrigerator that you don't know what to do with, you can get that and add that to this ground beef, half a cup of that instead of water. If you have the canned tomatoes like I had and it has a lot of that tomato liquid, you can use half a cup of that because that adds flavor. Water will also add flavor, but it's adding more flavor. So
Abby asked, when do we add the toppings on the tortilla? So if you've decided to do your corn and beans just as toppings, then the meat is done, right? So you can start building your taco now if you are not adding more here. Otherwise, if you're gonna do it the way that I'm gonna do it, then just follow along. And then a few more minutes, it will cook on the stove, and then we'll build our tacos. And what we'll do is we're probably just gonna build one together, so that way you guys can go and break and eat and make your tacos with your family. So that is our plan. So I'm gonna add my corn here. So that's 1 cup of corn or a can.
Yes, 1 cup of corn or 1 can of corn.
Okay, and then I've got my 1 can of black beans.
Beautiful.
Okay. I've got my chopped up cherry tomatoes. Got a little bit of tomato sauce. So again, if you have the canned tomatoes, that's all going to be in one place. I'm going to give that a quick mix, and then I'm going to add the water. And my pot in particular, my pan is overflowing, so be nice and careful and gentle when you're mixing this all. All right, so I'm going to measure my water. Abby says happy Taco Tuesday, everybody. She might have left, so happy Taco Tuesday if you're still here. Enjoy your tacos. All right, so I'm going to use my liquid measuring cup and do, you said a half cup, right, Jazz? Half cup of water. So I'm going to fill it right from the faucet and actually get down to eye level because that's the best way to see if you got the right amount. But also, if it's close enough one way or the other, that's good, and you can always add more if you want it to be saucier. All right, and then I'm going to give it a good mix. This is looking like I'm going to have a feast of tacos over here.
Fiesta.
Yeah.
So if you have a lid, you can put it over that. If you don't, that's fine. You're going to just let that simmer for a bit.
Should I turn up my heat so that way we get a nice little simmer going?
You can turn it up so that you can get a quick simmer, and then you're going to turn it down. So you can turn it up to a medium-high heat.
Perfect.
And while that goes, we can grate some cheese.
Perfect. All right, so I have pre-shredded cheese. But if you have a block of cheese, Chef Jazz is going to show you how to grate that. So grab your grater.
Yes.
And your block of cheese.
So I have a fancy Gouda that I'm gonna use. So I have my block in my pan. I have my zester. I'm using a zester because I don't have like a regular cheese grater, but whether you're using a zester like this or you're using a cheese grater, you want to make sure that it's flat on the floor, on the table of your cutting board. So I have my zester still and I'm moving my cheese. If I was using a cheese grater right now, those box graters, I would have my box grater down on the counter and I would be moving my cheese up and down at whatever setting. So some of you
So
might
I'm going to show you the grater that I have and my what my setup would be. So this is what she's talking about. So if you have a box grater or something similar to this, then set it up on your cutting board or on a plate, because you also get some that falls in front and behind, and then just take your cheese and move it up and down. And as the cheese is getting closer, just be careful of your fingers because this is sharp. So you don't want to run your finger up and down here. So be careful of where your hand is placed on the cheese. So that way you're being careful.
Yep. And if it gets too low, do you know what? I have this piece that it's too low now to grate. And especially I have cheese on a rind like this one at home. When you get down to this really small piece that's really just the rind, what you can do is take the wax off the back of it and then also put this in your freezer because you can use this for flavor if you're making a tomato sauce or if you're making something else down the line. If you wanted your taco right now to be cheesy and you have one of these end of the cheese bits, you can also add this to the taco that you have, the ground beef that you have on the stove right now. So I'm just talking to you.
I love that. That's such a good point. And I love not wasting food. So any tips are good. Okay, my taco mix is simmering. So how long do you think we should leave that for?
I think by the time we're done with our tortillas, which are the next step, last step, guys, we're just gonna heat up our tortillas and then we're done. So we're done and ready to assemble. So I'm happy with where I am at on this cheese. And I'm gonna put it on the side as my toppings with my other toppings. Wrap this up. And now my cutting board, I'm done with it. Oh, except for our avocados. If we have avocados. I need avocados on my tacos. So that's the last thing we're cutting. Then we're doing tacos, tortillas, and then we're just assembling. So I have my avocado down flat. I have my beer claw. I'm holding it onto it tight. And I am cutting right around the pit because there's that big seed in the middle. And now I have my two halves.
Beautiful.
So I'm going to just make slices while holding it. Or you can put it down flat and make slices. If you feel more comfortable doing it like this. And when you're ready to scoop it, you just take out a big spoon. Oh, one that doesn't have holes. Take out a big spoon. And you have all of these beautiful slices, okay? So I'm gonna keep it in there as my container because I don't wanna wash another dish at this point. So this is now holding my avocado. That's going with the rest of my toppings. This other half, I don't know if I'll need to eat it, but a good way to get this out, I'll show you, is if you're using our Culikid knives, you can just scoop it out like that. And then again, cut, slice, hold on to it tight, slice, 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 slice. And then take your spoon and scoop it and keep it in there for when we need it, for when you're ready to assemble, okay? So that's going on the side. I'm done with my knife. And we're on to our tortillas. So I have another little pan. It's going over here. I have high heat going. High heat now. So a little bit medium high. So if medium is halfway, you're gonna just crank it a little bit hotter because normally, right now we're using our pan. But normally, if we were making these with my grandma, she would just put them right on the burner. So I have my tortillas. I'm using soft tortillas. It's going right on top of the heat. I'm gonna get nice and warm. And I'm gonna do the whole pack right now. Or I'm gonna do as many as I think I'm gonna eat so that I don't waste any. And on our list of things that you needed today in class, one was a kitchen towel. So of course, I'm sure you've needed your kitchen towel by now to wipe your hands on something, but I'm going to take it and put it down flat on my cutting board, or you can get rid of your cutting board and put it down on your counter. And this is gonna be, as I do each tortilla, I'm gonna put it in my kitchen towel to keep it nice and warm. Kelly, can we check on your saucy tacos? How are they doing? This is just going. We don't need to flip it or anything yet, it's just going. That looks great. You might want to add some salt or pepper. I can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, sorry about that. Said it was a little heavy to try to bring any closer to the camera, but I can do a little taste right now to see what we think. So anybody at home who's added more since our last taste, take your little
Blah,
spoon,
blah,
make
blah.
sure
We
it's,
don't want to burn ourselves.
no, no, no. It's good.
Awesome. So do you need to cook down a little bit more? A little less saucy, or you're just about good to go?
I think the sauciness level is good. I'm gonna add a little bit of salt and mix that in. And I think it's good to go whenever we're ready.
Okay. So back over here, I have my tortilla. My first one is done. I moved it over here and I wrapped it up like a baby. So next one
Love it.
is gonna go in here.
What can you use other than a tortilla? Priscilla wants to know. And so I actually have these hard tacos, which I want to show you guys as well. If this is for gluten reasons, we know that there's also corn tacos. So I've got a corn hard taco. There's corn soft tacos. And then if you don't have a tortilla, what do you think, Chef Jazz? If you don't have either one of those.
Do you have lettuce at home? Use some lettuce.
Lettuce wrap.
Like
Love
a
it.
lettuce wrap.
I was also thinking you could do something like a taco dip. So you could just like leave it like that. And if you have some chips or crackers, I don't know.
Yeah, and then it's kind of like a nacho situation, but I'm also not mad at that.
True, true, true.
So this second one is going.
Like I said, deconstructed tacos. Yeah, we make do with what we have. All right, it looks like I can see that Jariel's tacos are being assembled. I love it. And we've got Ayumi is doing her tortillas. He's got his little taco stand. It looks great. Ayumi, your tortillas look good. Sheridan's also up to tortillas. You're looking good. Awesome. Alex said, great event. Thank you. Thanks, Alex. We're so glad you liked it.
If your tortilla is a little bit rolled up on the sides, you could also just like flatten it a little bit with your spatula for holding on to our handle because we don't want to accidentally knock it over. You can flip it if you have tongs and it's easier to flip this with tongs, you can do that. Our ground beef is just about ready. Our ground beef should be just about ready. Our toppings should be just about ready. Guys, are you ready to taco party?
Ready. If you can, if you're not too busy, let us know if you're ready in our comments, in our chat. So I think we're almost getting to that end point. So if you are cooking with somebody else and they can, grab a plate for our assembly. Like I mentioned, we'll do one together so we can see everybody's. And then we'll end our class so that way you guys can continue to make your tacos with your families at home.
Sounds good. So I have my plate. I have my beautiful warm taco. This is a blue corn tortilla taco shell, so that's why it's blue. Don't be alarmed.
Okay, thanks Abby and Noah. I think they're signing off. Thanks for joining us.
Bye guys. Thank you so much.
And Doug and Shannon are ready. Doug and Jariel, in case you didn't see it, Doug also said your tacos look awesome, and they really do. So make sure if you haven't already, take some pictures because those look stunning. All right, so I'm going to start making mine. Grab my spoon.
So I have my ground beef down. What else do I want to add? I'm going to add.
So anybody who still has their meat on the burner, you can probably turn your burner off at this point. My filling was very, very hot, so it'll be a little difficult to eat. So just turn it off and you can let it stay on the burner to stay warm. You can take it off, whatever you need to do. So I've got my meat filling, which also has all of my toppings mixed in. I'm just gonna put some of my cheese on. I love to get some melty cheese, so as soon as my hot filling is in my taco, putting the cheese right on it will melt a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, great. Amy, your taco looks great too. Teresa, killing it. Who else? And I see Troy's taco is being assembled too. Good job, guys.
So now I'm scrolling. Oh my gosh, that looks so good. Oh, those are cool.
Okay. Here's my taco. Oops, there we go.
So here's my taco.
Great. Oh my gosh, these are great. Again, guys, if you are, please take pictures at home because these all look too gorgeous not to share. And I sent our email in the beginning of the webinar, but I'll also be emailing you all, as I mentioned, with the survey link, which we would really love your input on, and as well as the link to register for our next class. So make sure to look out for all those and send us and tag us in your taco pics. Anybody have any questions? Throw them in the chat now. I think we're just about ready to sign off. Okay, Amy looks done. I want to make sure. And then Sheridan, can we see your tacos? I didn't see yours yet. Gorgeous. Amy says, thank you. Of course, you're welcome.
Oh, that looks great.
Anything else to add, Chef Jazz?
I think the only thing I have left to add is, guys, you did a great job. Thanks for joining us on this taco party, and bon appetit.
Yes, enjoy everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Look out for our email, and we will hopefully see you at our next class soon. Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
guys.